Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Orthodoxy Questions and Answers. And as you can see, this is not presbytera.
No.
Okay, her hair may be this long, but this is not presbytera. Seriously, Evan, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So Demos and Evan were kind of talking, and Evan said, "Hey, you know what? I'd like to give this a shot." And so we're always up for it.
Wonderful.
And obviously, I know you do a lot of DJing for us. Your dad's one of the world famous musicians, and so you're following in those footsteps and everything like that.
Indeed.
But there's a spiritual side to you too, man.
Yeah, no, it's having grown up in the Orthodox Church, it's always been something that I've continued to make a focus within my life, and I'm excited to be here and see some of these questions and get to participate in the discussions.
They are really, really interesting questions. We got a nice group of people from around the world that kind of ask not just theological questions, but they ask like very practical questions that they don't have a resource to go and ask, because we're always answering the historical questions. And I get it, it's okay, but you know what? A couple of practical questions would be nice too, right?
Absolutely.
Two big announcements before we start. Again, our Lenten study, we're taking a rest, a little bit of a pause from the Gospel of John, and we are reading Pope Benedict's book. I know Pope Benedict, okay, he's Catholic, I get it, all right. But he wrote a great book. This is actually volume 2. The first book was Jesus of Nazareth, from his infancy all the way up to Jerusalem, his entry into Jerusalem. This is from for Holy Week, Jerusalem to his resurrection. So I thought for Holy Week this would be a nice kind of dive into what happened in depth from his time entry into Jerusalem until resurrection. And what we're doing is we're tying this in with the readings and the hymns of Holy Week. Okay. So we're going to take the different topics and we're going to look at how those integrate with Holy Week. I've had a couple of you that have written in or emailed me and said that they'd like to be a part of it, and I've included you on the emails. Anybody else that would like to be part of this, don't worry, you haven't missed anything, because last week I had to postpone because we actually had the Metropolis Transformative Christianity series that they moved to Tuesday from Wednesday. So if you'd like to, just let me know about that.
And they can let you know by emailing agocny@gmail.com. The link is in the comments and description.
Correct. And then the last thing is, we get a lot of questions, and not necessarily just from here, from the show, but we also get a lot of questions, just me personally. People always ask during Lent. And you know what the number one question is during Lent?
What?
No, that's not the question. It's always about fasting. It's like Lent revolves around fasting, okay? And so I've written a couple of things on the website that talk about the different types of fasting that that people can use depending upon their lifestyle. This Lenten Triodion book, which was written by Bishop Kallistos Ware, and I just very, very quickly I wanted to read this. Now, this book was published in 1978. Okay,
wow.
All right, so we're talking older, and he says, we have seen a decline in fasting. So in 1978, people were already like, nah, I don't know if I want to do this or not. Okay? Now, this reflects a heretical attitude towards human nature and a false spiritualism which rejects or ignores the body, viewing man solely in terms of his reasoning brain. So what Kallistos Ware is saying is, in our Western world, we said, fasting, I don't know what... Let me think about God. Let me, read the Bible more and read more hymns and read. But we don't need to do anything about the body. We shouldn't concern ourselves about the body. And he's making that argument against that. And he says is that in our own Christian society, the need for fasting is necessary. Why? Because the primary aim is to make us conscious of our dependence upon God, and that the body is very much part of who we are. When Jesus Christ came back, right, what did he say to Thomas?
As far feel my feel my wounds. Yeah.
Touch me.
Yeah.
I'm not a spirit hovering around in the air, right? I got a body. So if Jesus thinks that the body's important, then fasting has a purpose. So when we get into these weird things like I'm fasting from chocolate, I'm fasting from lollipops, I'm fasting from popcorn. Okay, this is not what the intent of the fast was. The intent of the fast was that your body actually feels the same kind of, anguish and suffering, maybe not that Jesus felt, but there is a tie there. And I just thought that was very interesting to bring up because I know we'll get some questions on this, but fasting is much more than just, what kind of meat can I not eat and what kind of fish can I not eat and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's my 3-minute soapbox.
Makes sense. It's a good thing too because I did have some chocolate recently. Dairy free, of course.
Dairy free. Okay,
dark
so
chocolate,
chocolate is good. All right.
All right. Well, shall we jump in?
All right. Are you ready for this?
All right. So we have our first question of the evening from Migs 2682. He says, "Some Muslims say that Jesus was only fully human, while others say Jesus wasn't human at all. As a man, he wept after losing a friend and suffered and endured pain of the cross. But didn't he also fast for 40 days? That doesn't seem humanly possible. Didn't he use his divinity to fast and not his human side?"
Well, okay. So when we say fast, we fast for 40 days. Is that humanly possible? No. Right? Okay, because we don't fast in the sense of we don't eat anything, right?
Correct.
Okay, we limit our diet. So if we think of that from an Orthodox perspective, it's not that out of the realm of possibility.
Sure.
And it does say when he was in the desert, the angels ministered unto him, and just like Daniel and others, those angels provided him the sustenance that he needed.
Sure.
So there's nothing to say that he couldn't, that as in his human state, he couldn't have fasted the way, let's say, that we fast.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's and I think that there's, like you said, there's different parts to that as far as to the extent of which us as lay people in in today's society and choosing to limit, like you had mentioned, what it is that we are intaking, and just keeping in mind why we're doing this and how it's not, even within the fast. I know I've found myself at times saying, okay, this is Lenten friendly, but then I want to find myself being fairly gluttonous in these Lenten friendly food items, where it just I had to be more aware of, or I guess made it a point to become more aware of it and kind of scale back and say, okay, well, this might be fast friendly, but am I maneuvering, or am I moving forward in this Lenten period with the same the right things in focus here?
And in fact, in the same book, the fathers simply state as a guiding principle that we should never eat to satiety, meaning that
satiation.
Satiation, but always rise from the table feeling that we could have taken more, but that now we are physically prepared for prayer. So, it's not, like you said, just because I can eat shrimp doesn't mean I should eat 4 pounds of shrimp.
Sure. Yeah, it's it makes sense to me. A close friend of mine, also Orthodox, his grandfather used to say, it's always good to leave the table a little bit hungry.
I like it.
Beautiful. Are we on to our next question here? We've got by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Is virtue a means to an end, with the end being serving God, or is it something that we do for its own sake, as in because it is good in and of itself?
So everything that we do, and when we use the word virtuous, okay, it is going to always have an eye towards God, because from a human perspective, and human history tells us this, right? Virtue, if decided by a human, can change you know, depending upon what your morals are, right?
Yeah.
What Stalin thought was virtuous is different from what Mao thought was virtuous, is different from what Hitler thought was virtuous, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it can't be connected to human reason. So virtue is always connected. That's why we see in St. John Climacus, he shows it to us as a ladder that the virtues lead us somewhere, and they lead us to God.
Sure. Makes sense. And I also...
With the greatest virtue being what? What's the top of the rung?
Is it what? Patience? Or what would the...
Make peace, not war, because that gives us... Because we do it out of...
Love.
There we go.
Well, and patience, you know, what is patience? Patience is love. It's kind.
Love is.
Love
but
is
not,
patient.
Yeah,
Correct.
Patience
Okay,
is not love.
No, correct, correct.
And the second one is don't hit the table.
Don't hit the table. All right.
And then also by, from Fyodor Dostoevsky, also asks, is it a sin if you have the intention to sin, but don't do it?
So we get back to and our listeners have heard me say this a number of different times. I love the way St. John Chrysostom puts it. The beginning. So thoughts are not sins because thoughts are
not
from
ours.
Thoughts can be an influence.
Sinful.
Okay. So meaning that they can be put there by the demons, right? Do this. Come on, do this. So the thought is not the sin. The dwelling on the thought, which is the logos me, the dwelling is the beginning of sin, the action is the sin. Okay, so that's why St. John Chrysostom tells us, what do we do when we encounter the thought? We flee from it.
Sure.
Right? So, no.
Okay. And then we have another question by Nicholas Hierosterios. During Holy Week, what is the best day and time to go to confession before you receive Holy Communion?
Before you receive Holy Communion.
He says, best day. So any time before communion, it doesn't necessarily have to be on a specific day.
So, excuse me. For example, there are priests who have, especially during the Lenten time, they will have a particular day of the week that they say, I'll be available for confession from 1 to 5. A lot of priests do that. Sure. Okay. Again, and our listeners have heard me say this many times, Greeks aren't into confession. It ain't their bag. All right. to use a term from my generation. So everybody knows that if they want to do confession with me, they text me and we set up a time. So it's very informal. But either way is fine. Now, when should you go to confession? Okay. How far? There's not really any rule that says, how far it is.
Yeah.
In advance. Okay, but normally people do it at least 2 to 3 days before. That's typical, but there's no real rule.
But just to be very specific, during Holy Week is what the question asks. Is there a good time during the very busy week of Holy Week for somebody to seek out confession, or would you recommend that they do it at an earlier point?
Look, Monday and Tuesday, there's just a service in the evening. Any day, Monday or Tuesday during the day is fine. Wednesday can be a little bit difficult because a lot of priests like myself, we like to do 2 unction services. That can get a little bit busy. A perfect time is Holy Thursday in the morning. Come to liturgy and then stay afterwards, right? Don't receive communion, let's say, but stay afterwards, have confession, and then you'll be ready for confession on that Brote Anastasi Saturday morning. You can receive confession then. Friday is
communion.
Communion. I'm sorry, communion. Yeah. Friday really is not a good day, right?
Makes sense.
And then the other thing is, I would try to avoid Saturday because usually most priests, including myself, after that liturgy, we're going home and taking a nap.
Yeah.
Preparation for resurrection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then we have another question from Miggs asking, does the Orthodox Church have similar issues to the Catholic Church with getting the youth and the young adults involved?
Well, Oh man, I'm ahead. Well, so Demos has become our youth minister. So we brought him on a youth minister, and he really is enjoying this. So, am I allowed to ask that question to Demos?
I need to hear the question again. I was doing something
sorry.
technical at the time. I heard my name pop
You're
up.
good. It says,
But you got to hear this question.
So does the
For you.
Orthodox Church, Miggs was asking, have similar issues to the Catholic Church with getting the youth and young adults involved? And then he goes on to say, it seems some Protestant churches have thriving youth involvement because they address them differently, but they are lacking knowledge of reverence and piety. Just like the Divine Liturgy is mainly an older crowd.
You know, I can't speak too much in comparison to specifically Catholic programs. But growing up, I did go to a lot of different private schools of different denominations, many of them being Protestant. Of course, I had the experience with Orthodoxy, and I did a little bit with Catholicism too. What I find is much more successful is if the kids if there is at least hands-on activity or community building exercises. That seems to get the youth much more excited rather than coming in for, I don't know, the 6-hour lecture. So there is a little bit of growth, I think, that's still available in how to best reach kids. Like, for instance, we're planning an event here which combines the idea of rock climbing with the theme of Christian struggle. So what we were doing is setting up an activity so the youth can experience a type of struggle and then reinforce those ideas afterwards, either by the priest or myself as a youth minister. So I find that like I said, I'd rather not compare myself to ourselves to the other churches. But what I can say is, if this is applied tactfully, we can definitely generate an interest in young kids to build that future community, to build that next generation of strong Orthodox Christians, and make it interesting and educational at the same time.
So, I wanted, and I won't take too long here, but I did want Demos as our new youth minister to touch upon that. The short answer to your question is yes, we do suffer from the same problem, because I talk with a regular basis both in my previous parish in Flint and here. I've always had a very, very good relationship with the local Catholic priests that are here. Okay, and so we meet every other couple of months and we talk, and yes, we all share in these problems. One of the biggest issues that we suffer from is the fact that, we don't understand the evolving language of kids. So we keep trying to talk to kids as adults. So when Demos mentioned, the 6-hour lecture, I've seen it where Lenten retreats are things like, you're going to gather together and we're all going to listen to a priest talk. Well, I'll tell you what, when I was 16 years old, I don't know about you, but that was not on my hit list of things to do, all right? I was like, if you invite me out for a pool, I'll do that. Now, I'm not saying that's what we do. Yeah. Okay, but that was me. I don't think kids have changed that much. So the other thing is to have a youth minister that actually can speak their language. And that's not the priest. That's not what the priest is there for. So I think we don't, or we fail to understand how to actually reach kids. One of the things I like that Demos is doing is that, and I hate to put it this way, it's not right, bait and switch, meaning that we have a fun activity that they want to do, be with their friends, but then at the same time, now we can sit down and now we can have a discussion. And then they can go back and they can do things. I mean, it's just realizing who they are.
Complementary.
I don't think it's necessarily a bait and switch, because you are allowing that kind of, an activity that is able to resonate with them as something that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
And then also, how can we tie that in, like you said, complementary to the activity in a way that, actually provides with some, not only knowledge, but a way to draw, relate it back to our faith in a way that, keeps the youth engaged and wanting to, be more, participate more within the faith.
Yeah. And and Evan, I'm sure that you've had some interaction with with a lot of kids and stuff like that, and you've probably seen you've probably seen the same thing. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's I myself, having participated in a lot of the different or Goya retreats as a young teenager. We had now what is my cousin and other friends who are also have become priests within the Orthodox Church. It was a way to get together with people from the other parishes in Buffalo, in Syracuse, and create that community. And I think we do a nice job of being able to to bring that together, and even just the recent dance that we had a wonderful turnout of
absolutely
a lot of the youth coming together, and yeah, it's just how can we relate to them and continue to keep people engaged.
And they got a chance to see a sight that is very, very rare, more rare than a solar eclipse. I danced.
You
Yeah,
did.
I
did.
did. He danced.
You did.
I know.
Fantastic.
That's people ran out screaming, but nevertheless, it still happened.
No, you did great. Did great.
So, for just really quick, one last thing. This could even extends to young adults because the Murphy's Irish Pub that's right up the road here. Okay, so we invited a bunch of young adults to go out, and I didn't have like a format, like here's the agenda, what we're going to do. We all sat around, we ordered some wings, we had a couple of beers, and I'm telling you, within 15 minutes, they were asking me a question. They said, "Father, you know what? I've always been wanting to ask this question, but you know what? But because they're more relaxed. They're relaxed now. They're not like having to sit and listen to a lecture. They're drinking, sipping a beer, or whatever, a glass of wine and stuff like that. And so now, I'm equal, but that it was a much easier conversation for them to bring up a question like that and not feel like, oh man, I shouldn't be asking that question.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
And that's what we get from this show. Like a lot of people have said that the reason they watch this show is because people are, we've grown a very, very good audience who's very open to ask questions that many other people are just too afraid to ask their priest. Like I wonder if I'm gonna come off as a heretic, or I wonder if I look silly asking that.
I agree.
So when you set up something that's a little bit more informal, like the event you just stated, it opens up that conduit. You're like, okay, he's a human being. I can ask that, and he won't whack me over the head and make me say 7 Hail Marys.
Yeah, right.
Wonderful. And then we move to our next question with Orlando O. Lucina. Protestant minister here. I would like to one day become a priest.
Well,
After the process of becoming Orthodox, is it possible if my wife wants to stay a Protestant?
unfortunately, no. You certainly and obviously the marriages that I do show that in America you can marry non-Orthodox, but if you decide that you will become an Orthodox priest, your presbytera, your wife, must be Orthodox because the two of you are representing the Orthodox faith.
Sure.
Right.
Makes sense.
Real quick, the next one, Lynn Toy Train Museum says hello from East Rochester.
Wow.
I want to look into the Toy Train Museum. Please reach out to agocny@gmail. It's the comment right above yours. Because I would like to learn more about.
Hey, that'd be a great
I would
place to
say-
take our young
exactly.
kids, right?
Exactly.
That'd be
That's
kind of
exactly what I was
cool.
thinking.
I'm a big model train aficionado, so I would like that.
Fantastic. And then following that we have Subdeacon is that
Subdeacon?
is that deacon here? Yeah, Subdeacon John Barone. When did the use of bells come into the church and how?
Well, as far as I know, the only bells that I know of are in the Catholic service. So we don't have any bells that we use in the Orthodox service. And the answer is very, very simple. It was just to alert them that something significant is happening, like consecration, like the receipt of communion. So it was just to indicate that something important is happening. So no big mystery there. Oh, hold up. Can I get...
Yeah, absolutely. Sponsored by Wegmans Club Soda here.
Big seltzer, yeah. Not really sponsored.
No.
We don't take sponsors.
Yeah. So sorry, but
No, you're good. You're
not
good.
to get anywhere.
You have to reinforce
Yeah.
that
No,
sometimes.
I know. We're having fun here.
If we could be, sponsored by Big Steak after the
after Lent, yeah.
I might be open to that.
Sure. Maybe a lamb roast to just plug.
Oh.
So we have from the Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church, George asks, can a priest kick someone out of the church during a service?
100%, absolutely. The priest is responsible for the good order of the parish, and anything that detracts from people being able to spiritually appreciate and that anything that inhibits their spirituality or their spiritual growth, then the priest absolutely has the right to we wouldn't kick them out. We would
encourage them towards the door.
Yes. Okay. There we go. Yeah. I mean, and we've had situations like that before. Not probably the most common one is the persistently crying baby, right? So most priests, in fact, I gotta say all priests are very tolerant of a crying baby, right?
Sure.
Okay, we understand that, hey, babies cry, but there comes a point where it crosses over, right? Where it is a distraction. And so that might be a case where the priest might ask, I think the child might be, happier outside where you can calm them down. You could go upstairs to the cry room or something like that. So that's probably one very common example of where we would...
Yeah, but that wouldn't necessarily be kicking out.
No, we're not kicking them out, but where the priest has the responsibility to restore good order, to allow you
to be able to participate in the the worship service. Yeah.
What would be an example other than that where a priest would be forced to eject somebody from the church?
They start two people get
being disruptive.
They get into a fight. They start arguing. People are talking in church, and all of a sudden, what are you right? Or
have you actually seen that?
I have.
I feel like I've never seen that in any.
Yeah.
I mean, what? 30, almost 35 years.
I've never seen that. But what my peers, fellow priests have told me is that they have had people that will make
conflicting,
controversial statements as they approach the cup.
Oh,
like
interesting.
I believe in this, so give me communion. I don't want to take communion off the spoon. Make it another way. So they'll make themselves bold before the cup. And so the priest at that point
might deny them communion
and tell them, hey, you know what? This is inappropriate behavior. And you're out of here. So that one I have, my fellow priests have told me situations like that.
Gotcha.
But very rare, like you said.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I guess, definitely have not seen it myself. But, and then we have another question from Beth of the...
These are questions we've either been emailed, texted, or in the chat.
Gotcha. Okay, so Beth asks here, is a film depiction of Jesus Christ a graven image?
No, because an icon of Christ is not a graven image. Because, and, I just read this. Which father was it that talked about this, whether it was Basil? Oh, man, I just read this too. It was in defense of graven images because he was maybe it was Tertullian, but he was arguing against one of the heretics who was arguing icons in the church are graven images because we cannot picture a God, right? And his answer, the Holy Father's answer to that was Jesus Christ came to earth and became man. And what we are showing is who he was as a man. We are not depicting him as God, but we are depicting him in his human nature. Gotcha. So it is not.
How much artistic license is okay for a film to take in their depiction of Jesus? Because obviously if you watch and most film depictions, not every single thing is 100% direct from the Bible. I mean, they might show them like walk across the street and talk to somebody. I mean, that on a smaller scale, but how much artistic license is allowed?
Well, in terms of depicting any of the apostles or Jesus, there's a lot of creative license because there's no descriptions. Yeah, there's that goofy description that, one person came up to me and said, "Father, we know what Jesus looked like," and it's a letter, and it turned out that it was actually false. And it described him, what he looked like, and all that. And it turned out it was
Gotcha.
Not true, but everybody's excited about that. So no, there's no real depiction. I mean, well, okay, depicting him as a woman. Right? That would, that's not how he appeared. Okay, so that's not correct. But whether his hair is short or his hair is long, I don't think he had blue eyes, right? I mean, if he was from that area, he probably didn't have blue eyes, right?
Well, think about I'm thinking more along the lines of the controversy surrounding, for instance, Last Temptation of Christ. That film. There's a, like, how much artistic license do we have, is allowed in the depiction of Jesus? I mean, not just in film, but generally in art.
Well, now The Chosen, and remember somebody asked me and said, "Hey, what do you think of Chosen?" Okay, so we said, Terry and I said, we really liked Chosen. We thought it was very well done. Okay, but there were certain areas where they kind of took license, like they depicted Matthew as autistic. Well, where'd they get that?
Yeah.
But does it really matter? If he wasn't, it didn't hurt the story. Okay, but Temptation of Christ, can we say that Jesus was attracted to a woman? Of course we can say that. He's fully human. St. Paul says that. So there's no reason to deny that he was attracted to a woman. Okay, but it would be heretical now, I think, to say, well, then he engaged in sex with women. Because, as my Old Testament professor said, this was not his mission. That's not what he was here for, So we can easily see that in a perfect human nature, he can be single-mindedly focused. He can say she is very beautiful, but then he can separate himself from that and then go on to his mission. Sure. You've probably been, and you and Demos and myself, we've been in situations where, we were tempted by something, but because there was another thing that we had to do, we didn't do that, right?
Sure.
Because
absolutely,
and we're imperfect. So a perfect human being could do that. So to show that he was affected in that way by sexual desire, I think that's off the rails, because that's not who he was. That's not what he was depicted like in the gospel. Does that kind of answer your?
Yeah, I'm just adding.
Beautiful. Then we have. Next question here from Miggs as well. Does an Orthodox confession, what does an Orthodox confession look like? How does it differ from the RCC? Is that the Reformed Christian Church? And how are the prayers different?
Roman Catholic Church.
Roman Catholic Church.
Roman Catholic Church. That
would make more sense.
I do believe that a lot of, or at least some of the Catholic churches have done away with the confession booth, so that is not necessarily the way. I mean, it's still a practice of the Catholic Church, and there's this idea of that the booth makes it easier for the person to believe that they're talking to God. Okay, so the Orthodox don't really buy into that argument. So an Orthodox confession is really a discussion between two people, but under the veil of confidentiality, right?
Sure.
Okay, so you and I, if we're having confession, are going to sit just like this, probably in the church. We'll do it in the church. Yeah. There's some preceding prayers that will happen, and then you and I will discuss, okay? Sure. And then after that, then I'll
appear, get in front of the icon.
Well, it depends. Now, we do have the concept of penance, that I can place a penance on the person confessing, okay, depending upon what they've confessed. And if I think it's for their spiritual growth, I can say, and the most common one is that I would avoid receiving communion until, for example, let's say, you come to me and you say, not that you do, okay, because this will be on one of the outtakes. You come to me and you say, man, I hate my father. I think my father, and I say, okay, Evan, that's not
we'll
really.
release as a YouTube short.
That's a YouTube short,
Yeah.
okay. And I say, okay, so let's get to the heart of that, and we kind of talk through that. And I see that, there's some things that you've got to resolve with your father. So I will probably say to you, you know what, Evan, at this point, I don't think that you have, you can't approach the cup in love. So I would ask that, reconcile with your father for however long that takes, and then let's get back together again, and then come back to the cup. So I could do that. Now, assuming that we've all done that, now we would, like you said, go before the icon, you would kneel, and then I'd read the prayer of absolution.
Sure.
So it's, I like it because there's two aspects to it. There is the absolution part, there's the confession part, there is the absolution part, but in the middle, there's the counseling part, which is important too, because if I see a characteristic in you that impedes your spiritual growth,
how do we move forward?
How do you move forward? Yeah. Exactly right. Yep.
Beautiful. Our next question comes from Justin Messer. Any good book recommended on the Jewish roots on the both divine liturgy and canonical hours? So, any good book recommended on the Jewish roots of both the divine liturgy and canonical hours?
Yeah, I would say. And here I go popping back up.
And there he goes to his library.
There he goes.
And while he's looking that up, we got some shout outs from Diane. Good evening to you as well. And we also got a shout out from, I'm pulling up their name here, from Love World, who's who actually gave me some blessings on my marriage. So thank you very much.
Now, it's Diane, our loyal listener, right?
Yes.
So I have to little shout out here to both Diane and Ted, because they made a very, very gracious donation to our church, because we're going to be going to Buffalo to co-celebrate the Vespers of the Annunciation, and so we've got a bus trip. Okay, and the bus trip has a fee associated with it. So, there are some families that, that can't afford that, but they would like to go. And she and her husband have made a very generous donation to subsidize that cost for those people. So,
amazing.
I mean, thank you very, very much. That's really, really nice. Okay, so questions. All right. So you've seen me bring up some of these books. But one of the best books I've seen so far is The Development of the Orthodox Liturgy by Hugh Wybrew. This is an absolutely great book of the history of the Divine Liturgy. There is some in there about its origins from Judaism and how that happened. So that's my first good book. The second one by Saint Simeon of Saint Simeon of Thessaloniki, the theologian, and it's his liturgical commentaries. This is another book that explores the beginnings of that. And then this one I'm just going to put in there because Henry Chadwick is probably one of the best Orthodox authors that we have next to Meyendorff. So his history of the church and ancient society gives a very detailed account of how early Christians changed from a temple worship synagogue and then obviously into the Christian church that we have today. So these are probably three great books that I'd start with.
Beautiful. And then we have another avid listener who sent in an email asking, is there a day of the year that priests are not allowed to receive communion or confession?
None that I know of. Wow, I wonder what the genesis of that question was. But no, I am not aware of any day that we are not allowed to go to confession. Is that what it?
Yeah, Well, it said allowed to receive confession, so I don't know if they meant.
Yeah. I am not aware of any day that I am not allowed to go to confession.
And then we have Aaron, who asked from last week, said, Father, did you look into my question from last week regarding what would need to happen to a church if blood was spilled in one?
Okay, so there is no need to reconsecrate the church, but that area, let's say where blood was spilled, then we would, as we would do with Holy Communion, is we would take and we would cut and remove that out. We replace that.
Gotcha. And then Miggs also asks here, how often have you had to deny a parishioner communion, and what were the circumstances?
In fact, it was the not the exact circumstance, but it was that similar situation that we were talking about. I've only, in the 15 years that I've been ordained, I think I've only done it twice, and this was a situation where the person really needed to reconcile with a family member, and I wanted them to do that and understand the importance of reconciling with your brother before you come and receive communion. And this is why the Lord's Prayer, St. John Chrysostom put the Lord's Prayer where it is, because we hear those words. And let us forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And that's right before or very close to when we receive communion. And so I wanted to make sure that when they approached, right, what's the, when I come out with the cup, right, I say, with the
power of
fear of God,
with the fear of God,
faith and love, right? And you need those three things.
And then we have Carol Flower asks, how do I proceed with confession after being absent from Orthodoxy? Went Protestant for 40 years, heaps of sin to confess.
Very, very simple. It's not a difficult thing at all. It sounds like she is Orthodox, she was Orthodox, then was Protestant.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So probably, probably the first thing to do is make sure that you find, a spiritual father that you can confess to, right? Find an Orthodox church first, and find a spiritual father that you're comfortable confessing to. And probably first on the list of confession is what prompted your return to Orthodoxy, right? Mm-hmm. What was it? Why did you fall away? And what prompted your return? That's the first discussion. More than likely, the priest is going to want to ask about before he gets into, like she said, the long list of sins. And like I said, it's a very easy process. You just find the priest, and then you make an appointment, whether it's with the secretary or him personally, and then off you go. And not everything has to. Sometimes they'll come in with a list, and not everything has to happen at once.
Sure.
And what my spiritual father taught me is let's focus on what are those serious things, right? And then from there we'll move on. So it doesn't have to be a marathon 2-hour confession session.
Yeah, and I've always found it, with myself in confession, and could also be having had wonderful priests who I've had the opportunity of going to confession to. I feel like a lot of people who haven't been to confession in years feel this kind of guilt and shame in there. And in my experience has been drastically different, where there's not, I haven't felt this judgment from the priest that I have, gone to confession with, where it is like you mentioned, we're sitting next to each other. There's a conversation of things that I'm expressing that, are weighing on me, or things that, have bothered me that I am, reflecting upon or have reflected upon. And then it is a discussion of, okay, how can I move forward from this without, without either falling into the same temptation, or it's a discussion. Then there's just the ability to kind of let that go, and in the same way that love thy neighbor as thyself. Like it's important to also show compassion, I believe, upon to ourselves for our shortcomings. And by going to confession, it helps kind of take some of that weight off, and know that we're human, but we're making an attempt to continue to move and stay on that path, despite the fact that we're gonna fall off the path. But the idea is not to stay off the path, to get back up and continue on the path.
So, having said that, all of that, what is what is the number one sin that people commit and do not realize? I bet you won't get this.
Not watching the show.
What is the number two sin?
Number two, that people
don't know they're committing, but is a very big sin.
Enlighten me.
The fact that, and you actually
clearly I don't know it. Maybe I'm
but
doing it as we speak.
But you said it. It is the sin that they hold on to their sin even though they've been forgiven.
Gotcha.
They
haven't forgiven the forgiveness of themselves.
Yeah. So the priest has said, that I humble and unworthy have not the power to forgive sins. Only God alone can forgive sins.
Sure.
And those sins are forgiven. But notice what it says right here and I keep bringing this up because it's very, very important. All right. Because this is a sin and people don't realize it. In 33.
And while you're looking that up, we got shout outs from Love World Music and the Retchie Reports.
And here it is. May God who pardoned David through Nathan and confessed his sins, Peter, and at the end it says, and have no further care for the sins which you have confessed. Thus the last line that I say in confession in front of the altar.
Depart in peace.
More than peace. You do not care, do not have anxiety for the sins you have. I mean, yes, in that sense, peace.
Yeah.
But they walk away and they come back and they confess the same sin the next time. And I'm like, you've already been forgiven, but Father, I don't feel right about. Okay, so you can't put yourself against.
Unless they have, maybe fallen into that same kind
No. Okay, I know what you're talking about there. No, they have not. But they still feel it's still.
They still feel bad about it, even though they haven't.
Yeah.
Fallen into the same space.
And an example of that would be abortion, right? They just
haven't been able to let go of that.
They can't let go of that, right.
All right, and then we have from Migsian, what is the Orthodox Church view of the Shroud of Turin?
Interesting, but doesn't matter.
All right.
I mean, again, we really need to be concerned about things that are salvific, right? And whether or not it's true or not does not put me into the kingdom of heaven.
Sure.
It's interesting history. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not.
Yeah. All right. Our next question comes from Kojak.
All right.
What is the Orthodox Church stance on mental health and the acceptance of people with mental illnesses? I think it's a great question.
I mean, it's no different than it would be from anybody who is a brother in Christ, right? I mean, or forget about it. It doesn't matter what they believe, if they don't believe anything. They are treated as Jesus Christ commanded us, which is love your neighbor as I have loved you. So there shouldn't be any difference in treatment. This is why sometimes, handicapped and disabled get kind of perturbed at this over pittiness that we grant to them. Let me get that for you. Let me do this for you. And they're like, you know what? I can take care of some things. If I'm in a wheelchair, maybe there's some things I can't do, but there are some things I can do. And we tend sometimes in our overzealousness to forget about their humanity and to recognize that there are things that they need to do for themselves and that it is okay to be mad at them for, let's say, not doing something, as I would be mad at you for something you didn't do, but to treat them as equals.
Yeah. And I think I might have an idea of who's posing this question. I think with this individual here, sometimes they feel as though they've felt that their struggles that they're going through is a result of either being forgotten by God, or that feeling like they are being punished for something, which I I've expressed that I don't believe that is it. And, now a question that I sometimes have as well, kind of coinciding with mental health. What is your take on mental health and somebody's, possibly struggle with mental health being a result of either that spiritual warfare or possibly our spiritual health not being in alignment. And as a result, it winds up manifesting into a struggle with mental health.
Well, yeah, and that can be that I've seen that where just as you can have people who can fall off the path because they are not involved in church, I can see an equally dangerous path from those who become overly involved in church, where it consumes every part of their lives so that everything is taken to the nth degree, and their anxiety produces then mental health issues, feelings of unworthiness. I'm not good enough. I don't pray right. Everybody's looking at me. Why? Then they become judgmental, and that can affect their mental health. Absolutely, I've seen it on the other side.
So showing some self-love and once again, kind of forgiving of ourselves in our shortcomings and realizing that, we are worthy of the love of our Creator and of God.
Right. And, if I can be a little rude here, get a life. It's okay to have a life. It's okay to have hobbies and things like that. The apostles, they worked, they fished. I'm sure they laughed and had fun. Everything wasn't deadpan serious and in the temple all day long. We are allowed as human beings, we can be a little bit more Jewish and enjoy life,
Anybody that reads the Bible and reads Balaam and the talking donkey knows that there is humor.
There is. The Gospels are full of a lot of sarcasm. Jesus was quite sarcastic.
I was having a conversation with this man right here about sarcasm earlier in the Bible. So it is a question about how do we, especially because these passages have been written and then translated again. What is the challenge of interpreting what is funny or sarcastic in the Bible over what is supposed to be taken seriously?
You mean how do we discern that?
Yes.
Well, we discern that by knowing what it is that those who have gone before us have studied and said. Okay. So we start with the Holy Fathers, okay, because they have made interpretations, but also there are many theologians like Bishop Kallistos Ware, like Meyendorff, like Rudolf Schnackenberg, who I've quoted many times, Paul Tillich, and those people that have studied and have given proper exegetical criticism that allows us to see that yes, these can be interpreted in a sarcastic way or a humorous way or a very serious way. So we have the Holy Fathers, but we also do have modern theologians too that can give us that insight.
Beautiful. We have a question coming from Danis Yorgiu. What is your favorite Jesus movie?
What's my favorite Jesus movie?
That is, yeah.
Jesus movie.
While you're thinking of it, I can the much requested Lenten movie list is available on the resources page.
Ooh, you already put it up?
Yes. Well, it's a work in progress. We're still getting recommendations. I think right now there are about 17 films. So if you have a recommendation, hit us up, because we have a span of we have serious fare, we have Orthodox fare. We have some lighter fare, so there is variety in there.
So, man, this is when I need Presbytera to help me with my to tell me what my favorite movie is. Yeah, she's there. She tell. I'm.
Would you consider Ben-Hur a Jesus movie? Because if you would consider that a Jesus movie, that would be my answer.
For you. Yes, I never think of Ben-Hur as a Jesus movie.
He has a very important part.
He does. But the I'm just trying to think of, the Max von Sydow is Greatest Story Ever Told.
I think so.
Is that?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of because there's one that I have in my mind that I've just got to think of it now.
We can get back to it.
Yeah, I'm just.
Oh, we got
It's
a.
because
You should look at the Lenten movie list.
I should have looked
Right.
at.
Or a Christmas movie, maybe.
Maybe if we have somebody that could pull it up,
I have it right here.
Okay.
We have Ben-Hur. We've got King of Kings, greatest story ever told. Let's see, Passion of the Christ. I wouldn't,
No.
But there is that. That I think there is a resistance sometimes to be truly cinematic and freeing in a narrative told about Jesus, because it's such a controversial depiction in general. Like, people are very there's a little bit of a timidity to portray Jesus in anything other than saccharine sometimes, especially in today's film, like the Pure Flix films or so forth. So
Yeah, and those are the films that I like, where, and I know it's in there and I can't get it out, but it's exactly that. It's where Jesus is portrayed in a wide range of emotions. I mean, there were times, in the gospel where he was clearly mad.
he flipped the tables.
The money changers. I mean, he called the apostles cowards. I mean, so he has a broad range of emotions, of human emotion. Okay, the only one that we don't ever hear about in the Bible is laughing. But I'm sure at the wedding of Cana there had to be some joy there, right? That's why I like The Chosen, because they did show him kind of laughing and having a good time and dancing. And
Isn't that your favorite icon?
What's that?
Jesus laughing.
The laughing Jesus. That is one of my favorite icons. Absolutely. So I gotta forget where I've seen that though. But I like it where he is portrayed, not like you said, not just like a big fluff ball. What'd you call it?
I said saccharine.
Saccharine. Yeah. He had a depth of character deeper than that.
Exactly.
Beautiful. And we've got a hello from Sotiri Dragos, our good friend
yes.
Sam here.
Yeah, Sam, yes.
And he says, how come some priests involve parishioners more in regards to petitions?
Trying to figure out what he means by there.
Some priests involve parishioners more in regards to petitions. I mean, you volunteer a lot of people up.
Yeah, but the way he said, like petitions,
Surprisingly, I volunteered myself here.
That's true.
Yeah, I was not coerced into this in any way. We just had an organic conversation.
And here we go.
Yeah, you can't see the handcuffs.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
If Sam is talking specifically, and again he'll come back and he'll say, no, that's not what I was talking about. But if what he's talking about is participation in the church, our history has been a congregationally singing church. Now, we as Orthodox today, when we hear that, we poo-poo that. Whoa, look at them singing in the Baptist church. Look at them singing it. We poo-poo that. But that's our history. That's what we always did. We were the ones, this people who sang, Kyrie eleison, or we sang the cherubic hymn. The only thing congregationally that we sing is what?
Litanies. Sotiris says litanies is what his question's about.
Oh, but still, you got to answer that question.
What
is the one thing that Orthodox sing congregationally?
Oh, you're talking about within the Lenten context? Or are we talking about...
No, just in church.
In church?
There's one time we do this.
Yeah, we sing congregationally.
Oh, come on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is it what, the Christos Anesti?
That's it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In the
that's
context
the one. That is our
Lenten,
congregational singing. It's Christos Anesti.
Sure.
But when he's talking about the litanies, we have lost that sense. Now, what some priests like to do is they want to reintroduce that. Okay, and so they want people in the pews to answer the priest, because it is it's written as a conversation between the priest, the deacon, and the laity. And so to hear that Kyrie eleison, or to hear and with your spirit, or to hear Paraskou Kyrie, yes, we should be doing that. But the idea of chanters has robbed us of that, because everything fell into the role of chanting, right? And then people felt, oh man,
Are you saying Sam has robbed us of this opportunity? No, just
yeah, right. See, it's all,
actually your fault, my man.
there we go. It's
nah, we love you. Thank you for all your help and your participation in these services here. And then we have TLM concerning the use of bells in the Orthodox Church. Don't we use them on the censers, not necessarily as...
Oh, okay. Yes. So, and in fact, during the Lenten services, you'll notice that I have a censer with no bells, because the bells are a joyous sound, right?
Oh, sure.
So in that sense, she TLM, whoever TLM is, okay. In that sense, the bells are used during liturgy because it's resurrection, right? Each liturgy is resurrectional, and bells typically signify our joy.
And now, is there a point, I guess kind of tying back into that previous question, is there a point that was brought into the church historically, or has that always been something that was part of the services?
Well, certainly
the
that
bells within the...
So it's not part of the early church, but it was brought in. It was certainly brought in by the time of Constantine, because from the mosaics on in some of the Byzantine style churches, you will see the deacons holding a censer. So we at least know that it was a Byzantine innovation, but not necessarily an early church innovation.
I gotta say, whenever you bring out the censer with no bells, the first time every year you scare me up in the studio, because I think your microphone's gone.
Oh yeah, right.
Real quick, we got a $5 super chat from Migs, who says, "Not Jesus Christ Superstar." I
totally forgot. That was, that was the only concert that my parents ever took me to.
Really?
That was the only concert my parents ever took. I mean, I went to concerts. I mean, got to go to a Pink Floyd concert. Come on, But my parents were not going to go to a Pink Floyd concert. Yeah. All right. But they took me. That was the first concert I went to. Jesus Christ Superstar.
Play, though. I mean, would you consider it a concert? But did it feel like a concert at the time?
Yeah. I mean, to me, I thought of it as a, what's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. Oh yeah.
And who says we don't have music in church?
Too bad they don't. They should revive that. That would be kind of cool to see.
I think there is a current revival of, but I have to look into it. I actually knew
of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah, I actually knew one of the actors who played him on Broadway at one point.
And in fact, there is a range of emotion of Jesus in that, isn't there? In that particular play, I thought that because the next one, what's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. Isn't like the next line? Why do you want to know?
I don't remember that specifically, but there is some. But
Terry's now shaking her head, going,
Is there any Orthodox criticism of Jesus Christ Superstar?
Not that I've heard. I mean, I am not aware of any criticisms of Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, it wasn't...
Other than your singing, of course.
Other than my singing, yes.
I'm kidding.
But it was... I mean, it was the thing of that time.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the thing, man. So, and I mean, my parents wanted to go see it. That's got to tell you something, man.
Oh, we got another... what is this here? Who's that from? The G?
From Gus. We got a super chat from Gus, and the previous comment he made is, "Just got home from work. My, how Terry has changed." She did something with her hair a little bit, like the bandana,
Love it. Thank you. And then we have from Daily Exotics, is the Holy Mountain trip scheduled?
Oh, I want to schedule. I'm trying. I've the thing is, I've got to make contact with the 3 monasteries that we want to go visit. I want to obviously visit Vatopedi. I want to go to Simona Petra, and then I'm trying to pick what is the third one. Xeropotami is the one that the third one that I went to. So I've reached out to 2 of them right now. And I'd like to make it either, 1 week or 10 days.
Is that supposed to be for this year? Or for?
That's what I was hoping for, is like October time frame. I want to see
beautiful.
if I can do that in the October time frame.
And we've been talking about this for a while.
I know.
Then COVID hit,
and then
everything got, but we'll eventually get there because I wanna film.
Because, and again, for those people that don't know, it's not just, you can't just go to the mountain. You have to get permission from each one of the monasteries that you're going to visit.
And then, moving on to our next question here, we have from TLM again. It says, "I understand that the thought isn't the sin, but isn't there an exception if someone continuously thinks about how they hate another person? Isn't that thought a sin?" And I think that kind of ties into what you were saying. The continual thought is the sin. If we're ruminating on it, rather than it's a thought that comes up and then we push it away, whether we combat it with the Jesus prayer or
yes. So that
rumination.
Yes, the rumination can It's St. Paul. St. John Chrysostom talks about the beginning of sin, but the longer we think about it, we preoccupy ourselves. Yes, it enters into the realm of sin. Correct.
Sure. So Daily Exastos says, when is thing in Buffalo?
Yes, the bus trip to Buffalo. That is Friday, March 24th. The bus leaves at 4 p.m. Adults, it's $50 per person, and we do need registration done by March 20th.
Kids are free under 18,
and $10 for college students. Yes. So if you visit our website, front page, latest news, you'll get all the information right there.
And then we have Mark Fetch next with our question. With respecting to depicting Jesus, I find Western or Catholic art to be very strange. When Jesus looks so real and lifelike, it's almost uncomfortable to look at. How are icons intentionally different? I think there's there's going to be an element of each, especially within the the Orthodox Church. A lot of these iconographers have studied a traditional kind of
a mannerism
to the painting, but they're I think there's naturally going to have some similarities and then some differences, as humans are the ones that are painting it, and there's going to be a slight difference in the depiction.
Correct. Now, but I will say that Western art, Western depictions, do tend to be more portrait style, and they do have that idea of, I am painting you as a portrait. Face is a little bit fuller, so they do look more lifelike. Eastern art, specifically the Byzantine art, is painted more to reflect not so much the person, but the Christian lifestyle. So they're much more drawn. They're much more feeble looking. There's a little bit more of expression of pain on the face. That Christian life is a hard life, and especially when you're depicting saints, right, who have suffered through martyrdom. You don't want to focus on.
They're not going to be showing us a joyous kind of expression.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So the idea behind Byzantine iconography is to more portray the Christian life through the features than actually a portrait like a Renaissance painting or something.
Makes sense. And then we have Dionysia Dimitrakopoulou.
I don't know who that is.
Good evening. Good evening to you as well. Thank you for the show. And how can we be more patient with people whose behavior causes us problems?
So, my wife is not referring to me.
Well, I didn't know who Mrs. Euclid was referring to. Oh man! So just like Cary Grant at the end of Pillow Talk, I said I told
Cary Grant in Pillow Talk.
Rock Hudson in Pillow Talk. So I had the phone, and I said,
losing the reference, but go ahead.
I said, hey Demos. I said, Mrs. Euclid's on the phone. He's like, what is my mom doing on the phone? He's like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm married now. So, so how can we
be patient with people whose behavior causes us problems?
Well, this is not
this target.
No.
Okay. The answer is easy. The application is difficult.
Sure.
You have to see the image and likeness of God in everybody, right? Everybody has both, as the Jews would say, they have an inclination towards good and an inclination towards evil. Everybody has that, okay? So as bad as a person will be, there is something there that is good, and something has forced them to more be inclined to the bad. Yeah. And so we have to look at and remember that they are the image and likeness of God. So maybe just figure out what that is, not to psychoanalyze them,
but it's, attempting, I think, sometimes to just have, just an understanding that, sometimes, I think people's, the way people may act is a reflection of maybe the struggles that they're going through. Mm-hmm. And it's not, that outward expression isn't necessarily reflecting on the person who's experiencing these, types of emotions. But, praying for that person in their struggles and I think maybe is a way that we can be more patient within
and not everything not everything is personal to us, right? I mean, just because if you're in a bad mood, right, and then you say something bad to me, you'll probably turn around and say something bad to Demo, right? Because you're just in that mood.
Sure.
It's
but
a contagion.
It's
a contagion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I can't, if I take everything you say personally, okay, then I'm going to be overly anxious. So sometimes it's not about us. It's not about me. It's about, what's going on in your life, and that's exactly what you said. So,
then we have another comment that was, a question that was emailed in. It says, the church in ancient society by Henry Chadwick and the...
No. Those are the books.
Oh, you put those in there. Beautiful. Then... Sam also asked, why is burning of blessed items okay? I can see people being scandalized seeing a cross from the palm trees or from palm leaves or the napkin from communion being burned.
Well, we have to have a method of disposal, okay? And so we, as I mentioned, the point is that everything needs to be returned to the earth. So whether it's baptismal water that's returned to the earth, whatever that is. So the burning of it is not, we're not burning a body, but we are taking those ashes. Now, those ashes can't go.
The ashes can be recycled back into the
earth. Yeah. Now, so we wouldn't burn it over a sewer or something like that, right? So how they return to earth is the most important thing, or that they return to earth is the most important thing.
Just a thought. But it's kind of interesting to note that burning the palm leaves would be considered scandalous, and yet cremation, it wouldn't by many people in today's society.
Yes.
Outside of the context.
Outside, yes. That's a good point. How dare you burn that cross? But hey, my body, it's okay.
Yeah,
it's all good.
It just popped in my head.
That's fun.
Yeah. And then we have from Aaron here. Father, we know Christ defeated death on the cross, and we shouldn't fear death, but we are human. Would it be sinful for a person to have a moment of fear before death?
We have that. We have that in the ancient church. I mean, one of the questions that had to be wrestled with in the early church was, what do we do with all of those self-professed Christians that when they were threatened with death went back to practicing idols and said, hey, you know what, that Roman god, yeah, that's all good with me. This is not a new problem. There were many that we don't have that many saints because not everybody could handle that martyrdom. And what did the church say? The church said, yes, they will be received back into the church, but with penance. There'll be a penance attached to that. Okay, it was pretty strong because it was no communion for 20 years, I think. So it was quite a significant penance. Okay, but fearing death as a human being is nothing to be ashamed of. But But what we are supposed to focus on are the words that Jesus Christ gave to us and gave to his disciples. I bring you peace. Not the peace the world gives you, but the peace that only I can give you. And we have to take comfort and we have to take strength in those words. And so my prayer for myself is that I will die a gracious death. Okay? So to have the strength to know that the guarantee that Christ has given to me is the fact that this is a temporal reality and my true reality is life in Christ. Okay, and I have to be able to believe that. But yes, hey, every once in a while it comes in, it's like, man, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. The great unknown. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that, but take heart in the fact that we've been given the promise. And then we just have to hold fast to believe that that is why Jesus came. And that's the whole point of both the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Beautiful. And Aaron also wanted to say wonderful job on the recent video about the vestments as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
They point out the dragon vestment looks awesome.
Oh, he does like that? Yeah, I did like that. I thought that was pretty
The
cool.
next part of that series comes out next week. So look out for that. We're going to be talking about colors.
Oh, is that what the next one is, about colors? Okay, all right.
And then we have a question from 1137 Jam. What about the sins that you either didn't remember during confession or didn't bring up? Which, in my experience, and Father is going to read it here, but there's without knowing it word for word, there's a portion of that I always remember. Whenever I would go to confession, that Father would say, may be forgiven of anything that you have that you have not confessed, either by I'm sure you can read it here.
Who's ever sinned you met, whatever you have said to me, a humble person, and whatever you have failed to say, whether through ignorance or forgetfulness, whatever it may be, may God forgive you in this world and the world to come.
There you go. So do not worry about that. But
right.
that is.
But if you happen to remember it, you should bring it up maybe in the next confession, right?
It's good, because then you're able to at least have that conversation, and it gives us a way to be able to move forward with keeping that in mind. And then Sam writes again. Christ says that his burden is light, but why is it so hard to be a follower of the way?
Because Jesus Christ also says, and you can do nothing without me. So where we suffer our burdens is that we don't believe that.
We think that we can do it on our own, and that we've got it when we're not.
So we have to
we're
remember
not giving that up to Christ to take that weight off of us that we can't bear.
Hey, and especially for guys, that's tough to do because we're the problem solvers. We solve everything, man. We're good, man. So to lean on somebody, our dad, our friend, Christ, those are very difficult things for us. So we feel overwhelmed because we carry that burden ourselves.
And Kojak here asks again, what is the level of confidentiality with confession? At least in I think there's.
So,
I at least my experience, I've never felt that what I have said has gone anywhere outside of that confession, unless I have brought it up or Father and I have spoken about it at a later date. But there's I would say there's an absolute level of confidentiality.
almost.
As far as okay, so elaborate.
So.
You might express, that this is something that you heard in confession, but not necessarily mentioning who it was.
No, not even that. The only thing of late, and when I mean of late, I mean in the last 10 years or so. I think last 10 years or so, is that if I hear something in confession regarding the abuse of a child, then that does not fall under the veil of confession. Now, it is my responsibility that if I hear something severe, I am to do everything in my power to make you understand the moral implications of what you've done or what you're going to do. So if you come like this is famous in the movies. I committed a murder. You can't. I just saw this movie with Terry's got to click in and see it. We just saw this movie, and it was just about that whole theme that he tells him that he committed a murder. Confession.
And because it's confession,
he can't say anything.
He can't say anything.
Okay, but the priest is compelled to say, look, I mean,
especially if somebody else is possibly at risk for potential harm
Yes.
in the future
Right.
due to whatever may have been heard in confession.
Well, I did get a message from Presbytera, but it wasn't about this. I assume I will. But real quick, for those who are not taking the bus to Buffalo, what time does the service start? I believe the service starts at
6 o'clock.
Yes.
6 o'clock.
6
Right.
p.m.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolution. I think the movie's called Absolution.
I'll look it up.
It's
Well, do you remember
with
which starts?
Richard Burton.
Richard Burton. I can find that real. I think you're right. I think it is Absolution. 1 second.
He drives him to the end crazy.
Then we have the Reese report. In my parish, many of the hymns between the Creed and Communion are sung congregationally, especially by the older members who know Greek. Okay, so I thought, excuse me.
Beautiful,
That was-
beautiful.
Absolution, 1978. You're right.
It is okay.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. I think we encourage that that singing. But I gotta. Hey, look, I gotta be honest with you here. I have seen people who have tried to congregationally sing, and Greeks are famous for turning around and going, right? That
I mean, I sing often from my seats. I don't often go into the choir, but I will participate, from the pews.
are they nice to you? They don't give you looks.
I've
right?
never had any issues with it.
Yeah, good. Good for you, man. I like-
I can sing just good enough that no one's looked at me. So we have the Golden Thread asks, why doesn't the Greek Orthodox liturgy include icons during the Great Entrance in some of the in some of the other Orthodox churches? I think that
I'm trying to think of where I've seen. I've been to Romanian Orthodox, I've been to Russian, I've been to Antiochian.
I think even on the fans, isn't there usually some type of
it's the Cheruvim.
The Cheruvim, yeah.
Right, right. So there's that, but we don't carry
specific
icons
yeah.
around. So I'm trying to think of what churches, Orthodox churches, actually process with icons during either the Great Entrance, Small Entrance, or other than Sunday of Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Then we have a Happy Tales asks, if God only forgives sin and not a priest, can I confess from the heart to God in church without directly priest? And when it comes to baptism, I was. So, I'm assuming
It continues. Do I just contact the priest directly to receive baptism, or is cremation? Sorry, maybe the wrong term.
Well, okay, so there's couple of thoughts going on here. Okay, so the first one is about confession. The answer is, of course, you can confess directly to God. That, of course, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, but what you don't get through that private confession between you and God is you don't get the advantage of counseling.
Sure.
Right?
Counseling and having somebody else pray on our behalf in addition to the prayers that we might be saying ourselves or as we're seeking forgiveness.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not, I don't I've never felt it's ever the priest, as the priest mentions, it is not I who forgives, it is only God alone who forgives. But there is that that conversation and just some extra prayers, which we all benefit from a little extra prayer.
Right. And I will say that most of the time, if not every single time, people will confess things that are not sins, and people will not confess things that are sins. So that dialogue helps me helps them spiritually grow, because we'll have a discussion, and then they'll tell me something. I'll say, we're not supposed to do that. Really? We're not supposed to do that? Okay, so
or they're hard on themselves for things that aren't something
sin.
to be so hard on yourself
right.
about.
And so when you have just that private conversation with God, okay, then you miss out on the advantages of an accountability confession before the priest.
Yeah.
Now, was there a second part to that about the baptism or cremation, or what did you say?
It says, do I contact the priest directly to receive baptism or chrismation?
Yes. Contact the priest. That is the answer to that question.
All right, a couple more, and we'll close for the evening.
And it says,
Yeah, we don't want to wear our new host
listen,
out.
I'm enjoying this. If we want to extend it out, given your guys' time here, I'm with it. It says, what is the Orthodox position on the Crusades?
I love this question.
Okay. Well, four was personal. Okay, so we understand we don't like, but we understand 1, 2, and 3. Okay, for the protection, but four obviously got under our skin because it turned into just robbery. Okay, the original Crusades, at least the first and second Crusades, there was a saving aspect there. Okay, because there was protection against the Ottoman hordes that were taking over those areas. But the Fourth Crusades just turned into robbery and pillaging and stealing then the treasures of the decimated Byzantine Empire.
And what of the last crusade?
And what of the last crusade? Well, they lost the cup.
Yeah. It stayed where it was supposed to be.
That's because he said, Indy,
let it go.
Then I think, do we have any other questions here? Actually, as we're coming,
We got a lot of.
we got some comments and some interaction, which is great. We appreciate all that.
Jesus of Nazareth is a recommendation for a movie.
That was actually my favorite growing up.
Yeah.
The old. I mean, I remember it from a child. That was
Jesus of Nazareth?
Yeah, it was a.
In fact, that's not on the list. I should add it.
Yeah,
to the
add
list.
that.
Okay, all right.
I can't believe we missed that one.
I'm surprised I forgot that. It's been that long, but I do remember having a VHS of it as a child.
I think we'll close for tonight. And
Okay.
If we missed any, I'll save them for next week. I wanted to personally thank Evan for being
Evan,
on
thank you very
tonight.
much.
Thank you.
Nice to have
Thank
you here,
for
sir.
having me. Hopefully,
You think you'd ever do this again?
Oh, I'm sure.
All right, man.
This is great.
All right.
It's nice to get some new blood and new perspectives on this. Although we miss Terry and we're looking forward to having her back, I think I think you can probably get her to sign on again, huh?
I'm gonna talk to her about that and see if she's willing to do that. So
we got to keep the talent.
well, every once in a while she's got to have a break and just relax and just sit back and just laugh at all the goofy stuff I'm saying. So
But yeah, check out our Lenten list, and if you have suggestions, fire away. Yana asked, "What do you think of the Chosen series?" Well, it's on our list, so
I did. We did watch that, and I did. Both Terry and I really liked that. Again, that was a perfect example of taking a little bit of artistic license with what happened because you can't really prove it. Okay, but it didn't harm it. It didn't harm the message. Sure. Okay, so it was innocent enough. So, all right.
All right. With that
Wonderful.
said, have a great night, everyone, and we'll be back next week. But before we're back next week, we have a live stream tomorrow night, and we also are back on Sunday.
Okay, and we're within striking range of 10,000. I'm excited.
Less than 100 away. Less than 100 away.
I am so excited
amazing.
about that. That's awesome. I mean, when we first started, we were like, we have 100. Wow.
We were excited about 100, but once again, it's for us. It's not about numbers. The fact that we're offering some good news out there to those who needed it, and that's the reason we started this program.
And that's that's really and I kid about the thing, but you're right. The only reason that we're doing this is that we're offering now a forum for people to go and to ask questions, but to make sure that we always link them with a community. This is not in any way a substitute for church or a relationship with a community, in no way. But it's a bridge. Sure. We can get that started, and if we can turn some people to get involved with their community, then I think that we've kind of done our job there.
I am getting a few questions about my wedding / marriage. I'll tell you what, I'll entice a few people to tune in next week, and I'll explain the whole sordid affair.
Ooh, that's we
It's
won't
not
be.
sorted. That's actually the worst word I
I
can
was
use.
gonna say,
Oh,
man,
sarcastic.
you might wanna
And let me
reword
tell you
that.
about my divorce.
Golly, do you-
No. It was I have details to share next week. It was wonderful, and more to come. More to come.
Tune in next week live as Demos apologizes to his wife.
And we look forward to seeing everyone hopefully soon and later. And yeah.
We'll see you all later. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Good night.